Ciao Juventini, and welcome to the All Juvecast. This is episode 153. We're going to cover the big victory for Juventus against Napoli, winning 2-1. And joining me today to cover this one is Lewis and Carlo from the Italian Football Podcast. How are you doing, man? Thanks for joining us today, by the way.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And we have Carlo for about 45 minutes here, so we're going to waste no time and get right into it. And we're going to kick off with the lineups going into this one. And, Pirlo was talking about backing Szczesny. This was kind of the big thing that struck fans in the lineup, backing him after the Derby della Mola and a couple weak goals, and saying he's the guy, he's right to want to redeem himself. But what we saw in the lineup was Gigi Buffon was going to be between the sticks, and then Danilo, De Ligt, Chiellini, and Sandro across the back, with Cuadrado, Bentancur, Rabiot, and Chiesa across the middle, Morata, and CR7 up top. My thoughts weren't even on Buffon, honestly. I've always felt fine with Buffon back there. I just looked at this lineup quickly and thought a couple things. Danilo and Cuadrado I like on the right side, and moving Cuadrado a little bit further up. My biggest question mark was, again, the pivots of Bentancur and Rabiot, and would Sandro hold up on the left side? Those were my thoughts. Guys, I'd love to get your thoughts. Let's start with our guest, Carlo. Your thoughts on that starting lineup and Pirlo going with Buffon?
Yeah, well, I thought from a tactical point of view, it was definitely more of a straight 4-4-2. Well, I mean, obviously, for most of the season, we've seen this kind of hybrid 3-5-2, 3-2-5 in attacking phases, which then morphs into a 4-4-2 in defensive phases. Whereas I think we definitely saw, certainly last night against Napoli, more of a straight 4-4-2 really, pretty much in both phases. Really. I mean, it moves around, switches around a little bit, but it was definitely more of a 4-4-2. It was definitely more of an attempt, an orthodox 4-4-2 with, like you said, with Danilo at right back and Cuadrado at right midfield. It was more of a kind of like trying to get those patterns in. And I think from that point of view, it was the play was less confused. It was more structured. One of the big criticisms of Juventus this season has been that it just like players have been out of position in roles that they're not really suited to, and there hasn't been that flow in the play, and I think there was a lot more of that yesterday. So I was in favour of that before kickoff. As for Buffon, I thought that I could understand it because Szczesny hasn't been in good form at the moment. He's obviously made the mistake in the Torino game, the derby, but also the Porto game with the free kick at the end that cost Juventus. And I'm a fan of Szczesny, but he hasn't been in good form. I don't know, maybe he wasn't performing well in training as well, and maybe Pirlo just made a decision. Let's go for Buffon, and maybe give them a little bit of a nudge as well, because he's got that calming influence, hasn't he, Buffon?
Yeah. And definitely commands, and it's the ongoing discussion amongst Juventini that the team just looks more organized when Gigi's at the back, and just has that command over them. Lewis, your thoughts on that lineup?
Yeah, kind of similar to Carlo. I think that Juventus play better when they simplify the formation. When it's either straight 3-5-2 or straight 4-4-2. Players just look more organized. And we generally play a little bit better when it's not a hybrid where everyone's running around in circles. So I thought that was really nice when I saw the lineup. Adding Gigi in there was a big match. Juventus kind of needed an extra boost of energy. And like you said, Tech had been out of form. He might need some rest. But Buffon between the sticks, he's a very vocal person. So it's just an extra motivator for everyone to keep things organized and keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we got Carlo for a bit here. Let's quickly recap some of these moments in first half and second half. So we kick off, and man, a minute and a half in CR7, I'm just thinking, how does he not finish that opportunity? And then again, something that's been on my mind as of late that I've been bringing up on the pod is our conversion rate. And we have, for all our struggles and frustrations in how Juventus plays and how choppy it looks, we do have the most big chances created in the league. We're also sitting at the most missed big chances in the league. Our average goals per match are the same as last season, where we didn't create nearly as many big chances under Sarri. So it's an interesting one. And this one, I couldn't help but wonder, is something like that going to bite us later on in this match? But big opportunity for CR7. He kicks the post. He's frustrated, rightfully so. 3 minutes in, Zielinski gets in a good spot, gets it all wrong, luckily for us. And then we didn't have to wait too long. 13th minute, Chiesa, my word, absolutely schooling Insignia and Saj on the side there, and just a low, hard cross down finds CR perfectly, who slots home. Chiesa continued this crazy run of form for him. Absolutely incredible to see. We continue on. 33rd minute, a great run by Danilo. And he slots the ball through, and Chiesa gets to it. And he puts a little bit of a cross in there, but there's a late challenge from Lozano there. And I was absolutely shocked, not even looked at it. Like, your guys, your take on this one. Easy PK call?
Go ahead, Carlo.
Is this the one on Chiesa when he's off the pitch?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I thought they were both penalties. I thought both for Juventus and for Napoli later on. And the frustrating thing of all is that they didn't even look at it. That's what frustrates me. I mean, at least look at it, That's what I don't understand about VAR. That's what frustrates me the hell out of me with VAR. It's just so inconsistent. And, I mean, I don't know what they're looking at when they see stuff like that, and they don't even review it at all.
It was absolutely bizarre. Lewis, I know we talked during the match and whatnot. Easy PK call.
Yeah. I mean, I think both those were PKs.
Yeah, and with what Carlo's saying, absolutely. Like, to not even take a look is shocking. I mean, at what point do you even? What's the point of VAR? Exactly like Carlo said. I mean, it's shocking. And then we'll get to exactly what Carlo brought up, which was in the 44th minute. And that was just, for me, you couldn't call that because of what you just did at the other end. So Zielinski, that's also a PK on Danilo there, who was very, very clumsy. And again, he just nothing. And he doesn't even look at it. And if he would have, though, that would have been an absolute riot to let one like that go and then all of a sudden call this one. Absolutely shocking stuff from the officiating, VAR, all involved. A few chances back and forth here as they finished the half, but I thought overall a good first half for Juventus. The right energy, and everybody was working, CR7 included, getting involved in the defensive phase. But again, really, really tight match, which we expected. We go into the second half. Big save by Gigi in the 47th minute on Di Lorenzo. And he makes another big one later on Lorenzo Insignia. And Gigi was just doing Gigi things, commanding at the back. You could hear him loud throughout and just doing a great job. 58th minute was the other big one by Gigi there. And then 63rd minute, you see Pirlo get a little hot. Chiesa gets into a little exchange with Politano on the side. Chiesa, this is my one knock on Chiesa. He spends so much time, looking for calls and then like talking and like getting in these things. He's literally let his mark run down the pitch. And I'm just like, Chiesa, man, that's your guy. Like, get back there. Luckily, the kid's got pace for days. He was able to get back there and break it up. And you saw Pirlo just shouting again. And I actually like that reaction out of Pirlo. But that's my one knock on Chiesa. Were you yelling at Chiesa the same thing as you're watching him? Like basically
I'm doing that
discussion
every
with that
game
dude
this
stuff?
year. Yeah, he's always like rolling around or arguing with people. It's hilarious.
Oh man,
I love Chiesa. I'm such a massive fan of him, and I've always have been. And I used to get, it used to really frustrate me how much abuse he used to get when he was at Fiorentina, and I was just like, what is everybody looking at? I mean, I'm just like, am I looking at another player? I mean, I just to look at him and think, this guy's got absolutely every single attribute he's got everything. Got absolutely every single attribute: both footed, right foot, left foot, great shot, lightning fast, acceleration. Scores goals, makes goals. He takes on players, he dribbles past players. He's fearless mentally. It's like I couldn't believe all the abuse that he used to get. I just thought, he's just obviously an unpolished diamond, and he still is to an extent. He's not the finished article at all, but his ceiling's really high, like really high. So he's been, I have no doubts about him at all. As soon as they signed him, I was like, this is a great. Juventus didn't have a good transfer window because they didn't, overall they didn't do a good market. But in terms of just talking about his own this individual transfer, it was a fantastic signing, and he's been one of the few bright lights for Juve this year.
Absolutely. I was saying the same while he was at Fiorentina there. He was taking a lot of heat based on numbers. But if you looked at that team was just, it was pitiful. And they had a carousel that they had created there at coaching as well. And it was a mess. It wasn't working for those guys. And I always said, just get that guy out of there before he's ruined completely, because he's got, like Carlos said, all the traits you'd want. This was just a funny moment with Chiesa where he gets, that's my one knock on him. But everything else is fantastic, and he's been our catalyst for a while now. 68th minute, the party boys come in. McKennie and Dybala, that's when the party starts in the 68th minute. So they come in, and we don't have to wait too long, man. 72nd minute, classic Dybala, left-footed curler, far post, and the celebration really says it all. And it was a good feeling to see, regardless of what's going to happen potentially, which we'll talk about, whatnot. Fantastic goal by Dybala. And again, CR7 doing some hard work out on the side there, winning that ball with the defender looking like he was going to get to it. Ronaldo saves it, gets it back to Bentancur, who slots to Dybala. Big goal. Nice to see the team rally around this guy. I got to mud Lewis a bit here because we were going at it in the team chat for all Juvecast about Dybala. And Lewis, man.
Yeah, I just have to apologize for everything that I've said negative about Dybala because, I tweeted, I was like, when he came on, like, hey, prove me wrong. And he made me mush. So I apologize. I love you, Paulo, again. I think everyone's kind of frustrated with him being out this year and how we've been overall. Taking a lot of flack for it.
Yeah, I think maybe it's downplayed his impact on a few of these Scudetti. Would you say, Carlo, that sometimes his impact on a few of these Scudetti is kind of downplayed by many?
Maybe. I don't think it was last season. I think last season, everybody acknowledged that Juventus won the Scudetto. Well, for me, for two reasons. One, because they had Ronaldo and Dybala, who single-handedly won so many games and so many. I've never seen a season actually last season where Juventus have scored so many wonder goals, both Ronaldo and especially Dybala, unbelievable goals, just ridiculous. And that was Dybala was a big reason why Juventus won the Scudetto. The other reason I think was the rest of Serie A didn't take advantage of what was clearly a decline in Juventus team. I said it throughout last season that Juventus were there for the taking, and they got away with it because one, the other teams didn't take advantage, and two, because of Ronaldo and Dybala. This season, Inter for one have taken advantage, and Dybala's been injured, so Juventus have obviously lost. They've lost a big weapon there, but there's definitely. I know we're going to come to it, but there's definitely something broken there for sure. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to get to it. And I mean, honestly, the match kind of a little bit more suffering for Juve in the second half. Napoli dialing up and Juve trying to hang on. Clumsy error from Chiellini, who actually, in my opinion, had a massive match other than, that error there. Osimhen there. And Insignia steps up, scores the PK. And at this point, it's like, for God's sakes, just hang on. Do whatever you can and hang on. And in the 92nd minute, De Ligt makes a massive block, actually. And you see the reaction by everybody, Gigi, Chiellini, De Ligt. And it was a big one. And they see it out. And the celebrations are there. And this was a big one in terms of top four for Juve, and just starting to turn the tide. And you start to see the team with this reaction, and it starts to bring questions to mind about how much is on the players, because I've been kind of having this discussion with many Juventinians. For me, these players, no matter what we think about Pirlo, and, I personally feel like Juventus isn't the club where a guy should earn his stripes, so to speak, managerially, right? But the players are capable of this. They're capable of at least having the fight and at least having the drive and going out there and ultimately doing their job. And when you see the Derby della Mola and a derby, and these guys are going half-assed in the challenges and tackles and whatnot, and you don't see that. I do question a lot with the players themselves. And, when we talk about the little tidbit about conversion rate and stuff like that, and the fact that we still are generating a lot. And if you look at the statistics of key guys like Ronaldo, Morata, Chiesa, and their offensive numbers, and then you factor in that we are amongst the lowest goals allowed in the league, I start to question, is it just moments that we're breaking down? And you hear our captain, Chiellini, talking about that all the time. We're just not understanding the moments. We're just breaking down in these key moments. And, has Pirlo done an all right job considering he's never had experience? I think he's done okay. I think the argument is different. I think it's just, like I said before, we shouldn't be a club where a guy with no experience is taken into. And I want to get Carlo's take on it. And then, just how do you feel about the whole thing in general?
Well, it's those stats that you say, for starters, you mentioned them earlier as well, I find quite interesting because, I haven't checked them myself for probably a good month, but it was something that I was following throughout the season. And I can say that for definitely up until a month ago, Juventus were like 5th or 6th in the table for big chances created, for shots on goal. Those two were the two ones that I followed throughout the season, and they were constant throughout. And at that time as well, Juventus were, I think, 5th or 6th in the table, and also 5th or 6th for goals scored as well. So I don't know whether those numbers have shot up in the last month. Juventus have had a few games where they have had a lot of shots on goals. Definitely the Benevento game for one, where Juventus had loads of opportunities and shots, and was just one of those games. So maybe, those stats have gone up since then. But certainly until the last month, I would go against with what you're saying in terms of, is it just they haven't been taking their chances? Or because for me, certainly up until a month ago, and even since, I think Juventus' big problem with scoring has been there's just a total lack of creativity certainly in the midfield, and certainly Juventus seem to struggle against teams that sit deep against them. That is a clearly massive problem. Juventus just cannot break down teams that sit deep. Now with Napoli yesterday, Napoli actually came onto Juventus. Whether it was partly down to Juventus actually almost sitting back, in which case they totally going against Pirlo's ideals, in which Pirlo's always been, I will be almost like Pep Guardiola, and I will never go against my ideals, and I will always take the game to the opposition and always try and press high up the pitch. And yet against Napoli, certainly Juventus were deeper and were almost playing a counter-attacking game, which they looked, certainly in the first half, very, very dangerous every single time they went forward, because you've got the pace of Chiesa, you've got the pace of Morata, you've got Cuadrado, who's still quick, and then obviously Ronaldo with his clever runs. So, you've got, even players like Rabiot, who can, over long distances, have got those long strides and they can get forward. So Juventus were very dangerous. So coming back to Pirlo, I mean, I don't think you can. If you're the manager of Juventus, you can't say, he's done a good job considering it's his first season. I mean, you're at Juventus.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, those just you just can't have that next to your name. It's as far as I'm concerned, I didn't want to go criticize Pirlo for a long time because I think partly due to bias because I loved him as a player and he was one of my favorite players and also because I can kind of see I agreed with his actual philosophy of playing. I believe is the right way to be successful in Europe in the Champions League, which is the obsession obviously for Juventus, and it's the main aim for Juventus is to win in the Champions League. And his style of playing, taking the game to the opposition, pressing high, recovering the ball high, putting almost 5 men in the opposition penalty area or in the opposition, final third. That is the way to win. That's the way Guardiola does it. That's the way that Klopp does when Liverpool pull forward. If you look at the successful teams in the Champions League over the last 10 years, 95% of them, with the exception of maybe Chelsea, have been attacking teams, pushing forward. So I understand the philosophy is right. The problem is the execution hasn't worked out. And there's lots of tactical and positional things where you have to go into real scrutinise it. And it just hasn't worked, at all. And that, I think, is definitely down to Pirlo. Something's not working. And when I don't say rip Pirlo off, but the Porto first leg where Juventus was so bad and just nothing was working. And then that was when I realised, you know what? This is Porto. They're not a good team. They're a poor team with 10 points off the top in Portugal. And you're playing this badly against a team like that. That's when I realised this just isn't working. I'm not seeing the improvements. And even against Napoli, I thought it was a little bit better. But I still thought that Juventus looked very, very vulnerable, especially certainly in the second half. And so for that reason, I think that, I don't know if you're asking me this, but I would have sacked Pirlo, put it that way. I would have got rid of him a few weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, for just the sake of discussion, who would you have brought in at the time? Because the rumors are if this match would have went the opposite way, Tudor would have just been interim, which I think is garbage.
Yeah.
So who would you have brought in?
Well, that's the problem. See, I think it's a difficult one, and we were discussing this on the Italian football podcast the other day. This exact issue. It's like the main aim is just non-negotiable. Juventus have to be in the Champions League. That is absolutely non-negotiable, and that almost has to become more important right now than thinking long term. And the reason for that is because Juventus's financial situation is not good at the moment. They posted, you guys probably realised, they posted 113 million euros losses just for the first 6 months of the season. That's going to go over 200 million probably, almost certainly, at least over 200 million losses. So Juventus are going to have to make sales just to balance the books, just to meet the so the accountant, the accounts are in order, and probably they might even have to make. Some people say they might even have to make up to 100 million in capital gains in the plusvalenza, basically through sales. So that's already a job in itself. Now, if Juventus don't get in the Champions League, then instantly you're looking at probably, I would say, around about 75, 80 million on top of that for money you're going to lose through not being in the Champions League, plus everything else that's all connected, from TV sponsorships and everything else. So it would be an absolute earthquake for Juventus. It would set them back a long way. So for that reason, the reason I'm saying this is because, if it was possible, I would bring back Allegri for 10 games, for 9 games now, let him get Juventus over the line. But will he accept for that? That's the problem. See, if you want to look for the long term, I don't think he's the right option, the right person long term, Juventus. If we're thinking Champions League, I don't think his type of football is the right football to win in the Champions League. Not now, even though he got to 2 in 4 years. I don't think I was for him get them replacing. The problem is that they messed it up so much. How they went about replacing him and the whole transfer market afterwards. How they rebuilt after Allegri, such a mess. So the question is the problem is Spalletti for 10 games are taken. If they can basically get someone for 10 games and then reassess in the summer to bring in the right man for the long term. That's preferable. But I appreciate that's not easy, because it's not easy. There's not that many options right now. So
Yeah,
I appreciate it's a difficult one. You're split between two different things. Do you go for the short term and make sure Juventus get in the Champions League, or do you go for the long term? But I don't think that the long term option of keeping Pirlo is the right one either, because I've lost trust in him.
this is it's a tough one, because I also, again, I can't help but see a team that these guys, just their own personal pride, like they can enter a match and look like they did against Napoli, with the right attitude, fight, and desire, and then they can go a couple where it's just flat. So I don't know if you might run a bigger risk even pulling someone in for the Inter, like just to see them through these 9-10 games. I say maybe like you let the guys rely on the certain core guys we have there. Dybala's back now, and you just say, hey guys, like I think they can get it done. I think Pirlo can get this done and just get it in top 4 long term. That's another story. But Allegri, I can't see Allegri coming back for just 9 matches. You would have to commit to him. Lewis, do you agree? You'd have to make a commitment to Allegri, right?
I think he'd want a commitment. We talked about this in our group message. I think he's kind of been sitting around waiting for Juventus to kind of be like, "Oh, we messed up."
It almost feels that way, doesn't it?
It's the timing of his interview with Sky and everything. Like it just, there's a part of me that just feels like he's just kind of waiting around for one of these big clubs in Italy or Juve, just to be like, "Hey, we messed up, come back." But I mean, I agree with what Carlo said. I think that you're right. 95% of the teams that win in the last decade, like they play a certain way. Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Real Madrid. Even Manchester City are now playing that way. PSG played that way. The way that we're kind of accustomed to, it doesn't really work in the Champions League, and you're seeing that with Italy's results in Europe just across the board the last 2 or 3 years. As far as Pirlo and the project, I have the same problem that you have, Carlo, whereas like I look at a team like Barcelona who had the same financial situation, who was just as bad as us at the start of the year, and I look at them now and you see a massive progression. They're back in the title race. They kind of have, they figured out what part of the old guard they can keep, and they're relying on it. And they figured out what part of their younger guys they can keep, like what to get rid of, what to salvage, and which players that were fringe players are staying, and which players you're selling for, money.
And they have an identity, and they're progressing. You see a progression, don't you, Lewis? Whereas you don't see that with Pirlo. You can't look at Juventus today and compare it to Juventus in October, November, December. At which time Barcelona were a mess, but we've seen Barcelona progressively improve. Whereas with Juventus, you don't. I mean, can you honestly say, Lewis, that Juventus are better now or look better now than they did in October or November? I don't think you can.
No, I mean, I think that they peaked. Their best month was in January, and we haven't seen it since. So, that run that they had where they won like 9 out of 11 games, that was the best we've seen them, and we haven't seen it since. And, if they had a system, like you said, Barcelona have a system and a style of play. If you look at Pirlo's system and you'd say it's a hybrid 3-5-2, then it's a 4-4-2, and then it's this, and then it's that, and it's like, what are we building here? Like, even if you were, hypothetically, if Pirlo finished second, you kept him next year, who do you bring in? Like, what are the types of players, like, you're going to bring in? You're going to sign players like Kulusevski and midfielders that go all over the place. That's the complicated part for me is, like, what's our system, what's our style, where are we going with this?
How much, and this is one part of me that's kind of been on Pirlo's side for, is like, we ran through January playing some pretty solid football, and we only dropped 1 match there. And then all of a sudden, all these injuries and COVID strikes and all this. And, we're asking for consistency when he can't even get consistency in who he can really play. Does any of that play factor? And also, as Eric has just pointed out, Federico Chiesa has just tested positive for COVID. And that's just been tweeted out by Agresti there. And that's a huge blow. Another big blow for Pirlo and Juventus, and it's just been the way this season has gone, it seems like, for Juve. And I'm saying, even if we had an experienced manager. Sure, the in-game stuff, I feel, and adjustments would be where it needs to be. But man, he's had incredible bad luck with the lineups and being able to consistently play these guys, But it's bad luck. And
it's not the only one to blame. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I think the first ones to blame are certainly the ones that put together the squad. I mean, I've been criticising Paratici for ever since he replaced Marotta, really, in terms of the squad construction and how they're just, like you said, what are they building their squad for? What formation are they building it for? What type of football are they building for? Because it's been all mishmashed for a good few years now. It's been players brought in that some players suit one formation, but other players they brought to suit another formation. And then, and obviously you've got the Ronaldo thing as well, which has been completely flawed project as well. And, so you've got to blame Paratici, Nedved, the hierarchy, even before you blame Pirlo.
Absolutely. And I want to point out that I'm going to put Eric on blast because he was incorrect. And it wasn't Chiesa. Nobody's got it. That's a fake account. So we're okay. We're safe now.
Okay.
My question, top 4 and Copa. Is it enough for Pirlo? I think I know Carlo's answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Is top 4 and Copa enough for Pirlo in your opinion? I've seen some of these comments coming in from fans in the chat, and some are saying you let Pirlo continue if he gets top 4. Carlo, would you let him continue?
No, unless we suddenly see, an incredible improvement, like Barcelona, where they just go on this run where they suddenly start playing, brilliant football and it just everything just pieces together. Then maybe, but otherwise no, because I think we've seen enough now that it just doesn't. We just don't seem to be seeing any improvement.
Yeah,
to give him another season.
Yeah, Lewis, top 4 and a Copa win. You let him continue.
Yeah, I'm kind of at the same boat. I would say if Juventus finish second and they play really well the last 10 games, kind of like how they were in January, maybe. But I don't see us putting together that string of performances. We haven't really ever seen it since. And it really, really disturbs me that we can't figure out how to break down smaller sides. I know that's not all on the manager, but, it just really bothers me. So I don't see it. The question is, who do you replace him with? And 3 coaches in 3 years is kind of a disaster.
Yeah.
There's also the financial thing to take into account. Pirlo's making peanuts basically, 1.5. Yeah, 1.5 I think it is, or something like that. Yeah, euros a year. And if you want to get a top level coach, you have to pay 7, 8, 10, 15 if you want someone like Guardiola or someone like that. Juventus, don't. Obviously, we talked about the financial situation, so that's the problem. Even Allegri. I mean, I don't know how much you'd have to pay Allegri, but if there's Premier League teams or top teams in Europe that are also going for Allegri at the same time, Allegri's going to probably take their offer. So it's that's the other issue as well.
Yeah,
Carlo, I always say that the Juventus job in recent years has become kind of like a black hole, because you think about you take Allegri won the league how many years in a row, sacked him, fine. Then Sarri came in, he won the league, he almost did double, got sacked. Now you have, Pirlo, kind of the disaster is now. But if you look at the squad, the standards, the expectations, this is a team that talks about wanting to win the treble with no midfielders, an aging squad, and not really much to work with sometimes. So I wonder who would want to take this job with all those expectations. We've kind of had a short leash on some of these coaches, to be fair.
Yeah, it's tough though, and again, that comes with, and Pirlo even alluded to it in his post-match presser, where he talks about you don't pick the objectives, and the time it takes to learn or whatever doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter at Juventus, right? You're hired in to expect. The expectations are automatically put on you, and it's whether it's right or wrong is a different question altogether, right? But it's just the way it is, and it's tough. When he was brought on, I was filled with so many mixed emotions. Excitement because of who he was and the player he was, and we all, even Carlo talked about loving him as a player. But really thinking about it, you're just oh my god, this is a massive risk. They took a big risk. But I do feel like, there's just a lot of circumstances that he had to struggle and endure with, that even experienced managers would be having a tough time with. Number one, what I think of the quality of this roster, and number two, the fact of the incredible amount of injuries. But nonetheless, top four absolutely has to happen. Otherwise, this whole transfer thing, and everybody wants to talk about players, that's out the window if you don't even get top four. Like, it's going to be everybody looking to vacate really certain key guys. But I know we only got Carlo for a few more minutes here. So one thing I want to ask, let's say we finish top four. Okay, so that's hypothetical. We're in top four. Dybala, if he puts a strong finish together, is that enough to change the this kind of outlook where he's already almost 1 foot out the door? Carlo, your thoughts on the Dybala situation, and can things turn around? It seems like there's a break in the relationship there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult for Dybala to stay now, to be honest with you. I mean, there's been zero progress or even attempt to renew contract negotiations for must be at least a year now. And obviously he hasn't played this season at all either. You've got the financial situation that we've talked about, where Juventus need to potentially make up to 100 million in capital gains, and they have to look at their squad and see the players that can bring that in, and the players that can bring that in are those that have been there for a reasonable amount of time and have already paid off their contracts, like Dybala, for example, although he only has 1 year left on his contract, which also goes against him, because you either give him a new contract, in which case he's asking for a lot of money, and again, Juventus don't have the money to make that kind of investment. There's possibly 10 to 15 million a year. Would you give Dybala 10 to 15 million a year when he's basically barely played all season, and his injury situation, there's still question marks over how chronic his knee issue is? I don't think you do. And also there, like you said, it's been clear for a while now that the management want rid of him. And we saw that when they tried to sell him in 2019, and they tried to do the Lukaku swap deal, and he refused. So yeah, can I see him get a new contract? I mean, I think it's tricky. I think that the one thing that could possibly save him is there doesn't seem to be much of a market for him right now. To be honest with you, there isn't any clubs really that are really interested in him right now. For the same reasons that we've just said. Would you spend a lot of money, give a big contract to someone that's got a chronic knee issue and has barely played? And also, does he want to leave? Does he just want to just say no to everyone like he did in 2019 when Paratici was shopping him out to everyone? And Pirlo was just like, Dybala was just like, no, I'm staying.
Yeah.
you can't force me out. So, there's his girlfriend as well. He doesn't like Turin, apparently. She might have a say about it.
There's nothing to do. So we got literally like a minute left. There's a question coming in here. What's one move, signing, or transfer that will come that we don't see coming? That's a question for you, Carlo.
Oh, good. Well, listen, I think Juventus will definitely do business in the midfield this summer. Although we've been saying that for the last 3-4 years, and then they never do any good business. They'll definitely buy some players in midfield. Put it that way. And we know that Locatelli is the main target, and he's someone that I think they can get that deal done, whatever happens, whether they finish top 4 or second or out completely. So Locatelli's one I expect. But as we've seen, we just don't know what midfielders they could end up buying, some total randomer in midfield again. So that could be the one that we don't see coming.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's awesome, man. Carlo, I know we got to let you go now, but it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and I hope we can do this again sometime, man. It's been great chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. So sorry I couldn't be on for longer, but
it's all good.
I've got to shoot off.
There'll be other times, man. There'll be other times.
Thanks. And good luck with your incoming arrival.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks, much appreciated, Carlo.
Yeah. All right, guys, all the best.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, everybody. So, Lewis, we got a few things we're gonna continue on with the pod here, and everybody that's joining us live. Awesome having Carlo on and just getting his outlook on a few things here. And the Pirlo one is so tough, man. I think it's a tough one. I mean,
But
there's so much to think about. Do you adjust your expectations because they hired this manager? Your frustrations, kind of like Carlo alluded to, are more with the board and the fact they went that way. You factor in all these injuries. You factor in all these things, COVID, minus Chiesa. Eric, you're on blast again, man. Come on. Fake account. But that's the fun thing with these lives. All this stuff kind of happening and you're kind of checking, scrambling. It's all good. But yeah, it's just been an interesting season in general. And I can't help but feel like even if we had an experienced guy, he would have a lot of struggles. He might be better at the just and this is even a thing that we're talking about when you guys are saying like, and I agree, if you keep things simple with the lineup and the roster and just get guys where they need to be, it makes things a lot easier and they can play better and whatnot. But a lot of the times, because of all these injuries and stuff, he's had to go with guys probably where they wouldn't normally be as well, right?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot there. I mean, obviously, I think management gets the start of the blame because Pirlo was he was given a raw deal in the weird year, and he probably was given the job too early. I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah.
And then also too, recruitment wise, other than Chiesa, a lot of these signings haven't really worked out. I mean, Arthur's good in glances, but he's never fit. So, and we don't really necessarily know what his best role is. There's been a little bit of debate about that. So I think like on one side, like that's where I feel for Pirlo because it's not all him. But I think, when we talk about an experienced manager, I don't think the experienced manager would come in and win the league. Like the squad to me is not good enough to win the league. It's good enough to compete in the league, but even last year, he was
excuse me.
But what I think would happen was an experienced manager could get, a setup or understand, hey, this squad isn't good enough to play the way I want to play. Let's move away from it. And one of the things I like about Pirlo is that he's stubborn and keeps pushing the tactics, how he wants to play. We don't really see that a lot from Juventus managers. That kind of, especially Sarri, like that was the big issue under him was he, regressed off of his tactics. But you do have to wonder if an experienced manager was like, hey, this is the system I want to play. Here it is. I can get rid of these guys. I can keep these guys. They might have a better feel for that. And that's where I understand that argument a little bit. If Pirlo is going to continue, which, I mean, again, like Carlo said, it's kind of 50-50 because of the financial situation. We need to see more of this like Napoli performance for the rest of the year. Like it's got to be convincing.
And this is where there's nothing preventing these players from bringing that attitude and approach, right? We can talk about it coming from a manager. Eric and I had a great discussion in the pre-match to this. And I said, you don't have to be a raw guy to get guys motivated or amped up or played. And this is kind of how I feel about if you're playing for Juventus. If I'm playing for Juventus, like you need to know what it means. You need to bring it. Like you need to bring you can't go there and it's not a vacation, right? And we can't create this atmosphere where I said this a while ago, it feels like Club Med for these guys almost like you just, fat paycheck and sure. Okay. Results are so it's like, no, when you have a 23-year-old Federico Chiesa, and I talked about this a bunch, you have this guy Chiesa who's literally like, if you wanted to capture Juventus and what we are looking for in a player, that's it. Fight, the drive, the hunger, determination, all in one, and gives it 150%. Match in, match out, every single second he's out there. I was saying, when you have your spine, okay, your core guys that aren't matching him, that's a big issue. The Napoli match, they matched him. Chiellini matched him. Sandro, regardless of execution and stuff like that, everybody matched it, and that's what we need. Everybody needs to be at the same level. CR7 matched him in terms of even getting involved. I saw multiple times where CR7 was outside our area coming back to cover. And you saw the backline switch there. And if Cuadrado got sucked in, CR dropped back to cover that outside on the far side. And that makes a big, big difference. When we look at the Lazio match, CR7 was on the bench. Every single player that was out on the pitch worked their ass off, had the right attitude. And man, it makes a big difference. This was the Juve we expected, and Pirlo even spoke about it. He said, this was a Juve that we're used to seeing, like historically.
Yeah, I think too, part of the issue is, when you look at how this team is constructed, when Antonio Conte came in and built this mentality, right, that he just drilled into the senior players, right? That group has kind of carried things forward, and management kind of fed off that, right? And then Allegri was great at taking that philosophy and making it his own and, evolving it and adapting it. But, now what you see, I think, in terms of the players, like Chiellini, Buffon, even Bonucci have taken back seats this year. They've had injuries, they've gotten older. That last tier of that BBC classic team, the next tier under, which in years past has been players like Mario Mandzukic or Arturo Vidal or Carlos Tevez or Khedira or Matuidi, all had that similar mentality. They were World Cup winners. They were Champions League finalists. They were in great teams. Regardless of how you feel about them on the individual level, our next tier hasn't really taken that step up. Like you could say, like one of the things that I criticize Paulo Dybala on is I don't know if he's like that Banderia. I don't know if he's that leader. The way the team reacted when he scored yesterday shows that they love him. But in terms of like physical captaincy, you don't really see that from many players. And Bentancur is another one who's been around for a while. Bernardeschi's been around for quite a while. Tech has been around for a while. And you get this sense of complacency from some of the guys that have been around a while, where it's like they talk, we are Juventus, but like, yeah, we are Juventus, but like you've only been 2 or 3 years. Like there's more than just those 2 or 3 years. It's one thing if Chiellini says, we are Juventus, I've been here 15 years. I remember the rebuild and the restructure, right? Like it's another thing if the next tier is trying to push that forward, if they can push that forward, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I wanted to touch what you said about Chiesa. One of the things that, I like about Chiesa, and you see it sometimes with CR7, you see it with Chiellini, just pure anger when they miss a chance or they lose the ball, or if someone in the midfield gives the ball away. And I would just like to see that from some more of the guys, is that pure passion. You saw it yesterday. There was a lot of anger and angst and,
Yeah, and again, and this is why like I'm having an issue with the guys, and consistency is like there's nothing stopping them from doing that, match in, match out, But it's an interesting time, and we've got some live comments coming in here and questions that we can even add into the mix here. And for anybody that's listening to the audio on this, the lives are a lot of fun, and it's a way for you guys to join in on the discussion and get questions in. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast channel also on YouTube, all Juvecast, and you can take part in these lives. And that's where you get the extra stuff too, the pre-match day lives and a lot of fun other stuff, hot takes, debates, and stuff that we get going. So keep that in mind. David coming in. Is it better to beat Roma, who can't beat big teams, or Juve, who can't beat the small teams? Ouch. Let's just get back to Juve. Let's just get back to being Juve and winning against all of them. We historically struggle against the small teams anyway. So
I'm going to say Juve because every match day I tweet, things are bad, but they're not Roma bad. So, I can't say it's better to be Roma.
Yeah.
I tweet that out a lot.
Yeah. Maximilian coming in saying Pirlo has been dealing with his team trying to implement something completely different and incredibly difficult circumstances. He deserves another shot if we don't miss out on Champions League. Georg coming in with the same thing. Give Pirlo another season with Locatelli, a new midfielder, and an upgrade on Morata. And here we go. Morata. Do you extend the loan? Because he has been struggling as of late. Pirlo's talked about how sensitive a player he is and whatnot. And yesterday in a match where I was really happy with the entire team performance, Morata was the one again that was just noticeably off. And counterattacks, my God, some of the decisions. He had Chiesa on a nice counterattack, and he just held on and held. And I'm like, man, when are you going to play him through? He did with an awful pass when it's offside for Chiesa. And I'm just like, oh my God. And you see Chiesa just absolutely lose it, and rightfully so. Morata's just off. But I think, and again, this is all hypothetically, that Juve locks in on a top four. I can't see us creating more gaps to fill without extending them, you know. But again, there's a lot of circumstances that change that, you know.
I think for me, it depends on if Juventus go through and they sell one of Dybala or Ronaldo, which is probably likely. But as Carlo mentioned, there's not really that big of a market for someone like Dybala because of the injuries and stuff. So they ended up in like a, crazy situation where they have both next year. Then I would say don't renew the loan, like try and get someone else because you already have those two players. But if one of them goes, I think you have to take it because it's only a 10 million loan. I mean, you might have to take it anyway, even if they stay. But like at least if one of them leaves, and Morata goes back to Atletico, now you have one forward and a half forward, which is Kulusevski. So then you would just have to take it. So you have some numbers there. But I think it just depends on what happens with Dybala or Ronaldo and if they stay or if they go.
Well, that's exactly it, right? I think it's all going to depend on that, what happens. But in my personal opinion, like, he's also shown the difference that a true 9 makes up there.
Yeah.
So while we all talk about this, like, I think whether your combination is Ronaldo, Dybala, Ronaldo, Chiesa, Kulusevski, whatever, they've all, while they've been up there, needed a 9.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just like, just take it for one more year. 10 million euros is nothing really in the grand scheme of things. It's just a stopgap. There's too many other positions to deal with. This team needs fullbacks. We need midfielders. Creating more gaps to fill, it just doesn't make sense to me, especially factoring in the circumstances financially and whatnot. So, a streaky player that he is, sure, but still 30.
One thing I'll say about Morata is he's also a pretty good locker room guy as well. So he seems, the younger players seem to feed off of him a little bit. Some of his post-match pressers have been like the Lazio one and, things like that. It's kind of the energy you need to rejuvenate the squad. So that's a little bit of an extra boost in his favor, but he's a tough watch. And I love him, but he's a tough watch.
Yeah, man. Padre coming in with Belotti is 35 million only. Why are we not going for him? Well, 35 million only. Usually that's an only. This particular year, it's a healthy number. And again, you're going to be dropping. It all depends. You gotta sell to. Juve's got to come up with this 100 million plus Valenza. Okay. And that's going to be key. They're going to probably spend money on Locatelli. There's 40 gone right there. Getting another player in and around that money is probably going to be difficult without swaps, and good luck for anybody wanting to go to Torino. So it's going to be challenging. It's going to be challenging.
I think something we didn't mention, they talked about the Dybala swap, but you talked about this pre-match, but the Romagnoli Berna swap, I think, moving Demiral is not necessarily unrealistic based on what he's valued at.
Yeah.
As unpopular as that might be.
So this is a weird one for me too. To be honest, is Romagnoli Bernardeschi swap. So again, in my personal opinion, you look to get your plus Valenza with guys that are the issue first. So And this is fine if this is like something that they want to just test the waters and see. And it's also been reported that Milan are uninterested in making that move. So Romagnoli would be looking somewhere around 6 to 8 million in salary. Number one, I think he's okay. That's about it for him just as a player. But in terms of the swap and even to gain the plusvalenza, I don't know, like people are so quick to throw Demirol out too and just say, no, sell Demirol, bring in Romagnoli and whatnot. But again, we get into this issue where we continue to downgrade and take downgrades. And for me, that is a downgrade because if I got a guy going 1v1, there's no way in hell I pick Romagnoli over Demirol in 1v1 scenarios at the back or whatnot. Plus, we need a little bit of that ugliness at the back, which Demirol brings. He's getting better at his control and whatnot. I think Demirol's got like Romagnoli's had this ceiling that he hasn't even come close to. You know, Demirol's already ahead of him, in my opinion.
It's not really a question of Demirol's ability. It's just like they have to cover that 100 million. And
but again, use the guys that are issues first. You've got two guys that came in on free that really haven't set themselves apart. So in my personal opinion, Ramsey needs to be somebody that you should invest a lot of time in trying to move. Okay. Yeah. Then Rabiot, he hasn't done anything to really set himself apart either. You've also got Bentancur. I think you could pick one out of Rabiot, Bentancur, but Ramsey has to be a guy you move. And that's straight to the positives. And you gain a healthy salary chunk back, right? One of Rabiot or Benta, preferably Rabiot for the plusvalenza, but don't go because you're going to be looking at midfielders anyways. You know what I mean? Like you're already shopping for midfielders. You can't keep these midfielders and bring in more, right? Yeah. That's how your holes are just going to open up all over the place. They got to deal with Costa, Rugani, DeCilio. They have to deal with those guys. I say one of Rabiot or Benta and Ramsey has to go for sure. You got to move that.
I wonder about the markets for some of those players, and that's why.
Well, that's just it. But that's why also it's been reported that Paratici's going nuts right now, and he should be calling absolutely everybody, scouting out everybody, figuring out what they need to do because he's got to cover all bases and he's got to see. I think Ramsey still has a market in England. I still say he's got a market in England. I'm not worried about trying to find a team for him, to be honest. It's just the tough scenario is that everybody knows the predicament that Juve's put themselves in. This is the same boat for the past 3 seasons, right? Your cards are on the table, so it's hard to play. It's hard to play poker when your cards are showing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of the scenario. So the numbers might not be where they need to be, but I think they need to look at this in terms of not just because it feels to me like it's always who's going to get the most money, who's got the best market, right? And then we make that move. But in the long run, it's like, holy shit, it's almost a wrong way of doing things because you're keeping financially, right? Massive gain in salary, not going to do much for the books. You know, realistically at this point in his career, again, with our cards all out on the table, especially if he says, hey, I want out, teams aren't going to be like, yeah, I'm going to pay this much. You know what I mean? It's just not going to happen. It's going to be like, holy shit, what can we get, right?
Yeah.
Unless CR does us a favor and helps with that, right? And just be like, no, you know, like.
Well, I mean, I think if Real Madrid make the semifinals, there might be a chance of that, you know?
Yeah, who knows, man? And honestly, I think, again, I've said it for a while, in terms of both parties, I think it makes the most sense. It makes the most sense to go separate ways in that relationship. Ronaldo, where he's at in his career now, doesn't make sense to take part in like this rebuild, this reshape, right?
Yeah.
let's get to this one, and I want everybody coming in here and saying it because this has been a hot topic for Juventini now. Szczesny is our starter as per Pirlo. Do you guys feel more comfortable with Buffon finishing out to ensure? Does he give you more confidence and whatnot? What do you think, Lewis? Would you roll with Buffon to finish out the matches?
I don't know. It's tough. I think that the Tech's made a lot of mistakes this year, but I think Buffon. I love Buffon, but I just don't think, especially if his contract is expiring, I think you just keep Tech as the number one. I mean, I don't. I think it's nice to dream about Buffon being the number one, and he's been solid when he's played. But sometimes you do see the age a little bit. Here and there, it creeps in. I think from a leadership standpoint, it's amazing. He's still one of the best keepers when he plays. But I keep Tech as the number one, especially if you're going forward. I think that the ball's in the players' hands on their own to do it. Even if Buffon's on the pitch, I think that the rest of the team has to perform.
Yeah. So David coming in saying Buffon may not be better overall technically, but good leadership has more effect than slightly better skills. Yeah, I think in terms of the team and where they're at, and just Buffon's guidance really at the back, it really stands out right now. Mm-hmm. But I think Szczesny's sitting needed to happen.
Yeah.
That particular match. He needs to respond. He needs to react. But the soft goals, they just need to stop. And, and I agree with you, the age does show here and there. But we talked about this before the show too. And you don't see, if you see one of those softies on Buffon, which is very rare, even at an old age, he follows it up and you're not getting another one. You know what I mean?
His mentality it's different. I mean, I think that's why he stayed at the top for as long as he had. He's a smart keeper. He relies on his football IQ to make the saves that he does. It's awesome to see him. And it's great to have, the greatest keeper probably ever, even in later years as an alternative to Tech. But I think in terms of ability, I'd still keep Tech, but it's nice to have Gigi to come in and shuffle things up.
Yeah. And, man, Gigi's like, this is the thing when we get into conversations about like the greatest and whatnot, and all these guys about goalkeepers and whatnot. Like for me, it's things like this that don't put anybody close in terms of my time anyways as keepers. It's just Buffon, because the amount of those errors and whatnot, you just don't, like, he went so long at the top, and like you'd see errors, but there's so few and far between. And then you see all these other guys that were coming up, and then you watch them and you're like, holy, the mistakes just pile up. And you're like, wow, Neuer, who's supposed to be to some better than Buffon, pretty soft one on Mbappe there for the first one yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that. And then same Napoli, Buffon made that same save like 3 times during that match.
Yeah, he did.
You know what I mean? Like, and even closer on the Insigne one where he robbed him. So
I think as well, Juventus's problem isn't necessarily at the back, which I think to nitpick, we nitpick on Tech a lot because we don't convert many chances, and it feels like, while like he's made some mistakes and he hasn't been perfect this year, if we convert the chances that we have, like if the conversion rate was up, I don't think we notice it as much as we probably do now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. And then another thing with yesterday's performance is Chiellini reached 4th in appearances with 528. 3rd place, Serie 552. Gigi's in 2nd with 682. And Del Piero's at 705 for appearances for Juventus. And Chiellini, will he catch Serie? His left calf probably cringing right now at the
Yeah.
thought.
He might. I don't think so, but it'll be close.
I think he's probably going to call it this season.
Yeah, I think this is it.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear some of the reports about Juve possibly just not renewing Chiellini or Buffon. They were on 1 years this year.
Yeah.
It is what it is. For me, I can see Buffon sticking around because he's absolutely not hurting you any.
Yeah.
And as a 1-2 punch with whoever you bring in as a 1, it's incredible to have. And honestly, he stepped into big matches this season. And that's another thing that kind of has you wondering about the number 1 position if, you're going into big ones and he's been the guy we've gone to. And it's been multiple times a season. So it makes you wonder, right? Chiellini, I understand it. Get a roster spot for a guy that's reliable. Chiellini, again, yesterday was massive other than that one error where he got clumsy.
Yeah.
He was big. There was another one that was questionable with Osimhen there, but I didn't think it was a call.
He was kind of trying to take Osimhen out a little bit, a couple times there.
The one where they were kind of caught up there and George was kind of holding him a bit. I thought he was kind of more looking for the call. Nothing there. But yeah, interesting to see these appearances. If Gigi does stick around and maybe surpass Del Piero, I saw Maurizio from around Turin ask the question, would you feel happy or annoyed if he surpassed Del Piero? And I was just like, I put a comment, I said, I could care less. I'd be happy. Yeah. What's the difference? They're all legends for us. Whoever's at the top spot, we are so fortunate to have had these guys for that long. It's incredible. And it's one of the things I've been talking about this club and this team currently. We've had such an incredible core for so long. And you talked about it perfectly earlier on in this pod. We just need to replace those guys, but it's incredibly hard.
Yeah.
We got absolutely spoiled. It's very, very hard to find a caliber of group of guys like that you can just roll on and never have like a dip. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. It's very, very difficult. And when you look at that set of leaders that we had and where we're going now, it's like you start looking around this roster and you're like, man, who are the guys that are going to start to take over outside of a couple? It's just not there, right?
Yeah, I think that's part of the management's thinking with not renewing them is like, hey, rip the Band-Aid off. Let's see what we have in terms of leaders going forward.
Yeah.
Because it's, and just to return that generation, these are guys that have won everything and have talked about, what Juventus was. Well, now Juventus is in kind of a transition. So what Juventus was isn't necessarily what it is right now. So I don't know. It'd be tough, though. I hate to see them both leave without fans to send them off.
Yeah, that's the killer.
Yeah.
To see guys like that go with Gigi already got a send-off. He's getting
but listen, he went to Serie B. There's no right send-off. There's not too many you can't give, there's no number on them for him,
Yeah, I know. I get it. I get it. Now let's talk in terms of the remaining matches. So on April the 11th, this weekend here, Juve and Genoa. Okay, it's going to start there. Basically, it's Genoa, Atalanta, Parma, and Fiorentina to finish out April. So Genoa again. Could be a trap game.
Yeah, historically, it usually is.
Yeah, and this is the thing is it's going to be 6 a.m. on the 11th, which should be the Saturday. No, Sunday.
Sunday, yeah.
Sunday. So Sunday, the 11th at 6 a.m. my time. And typically a trap game, and it could be. And again, we talk about this team and the intensity and keeping it and maintaining it. And this is going to be it. It's like you're down to crunch time. You got to keep it rolling. After that match, a week later, you'll have Atalanta, which will be a massive one for the top four as well. They're all really massive right now for the top four, but you definitely got to beat the ones that are in that top four with you. So you definitely got to win those ones. But man, it's tough. And it kind of left this feeling yesterday while we won. It was a big win, and it's always great to beat rivals. But at the same time, it's like when you sit back, you're like, damn, that was a big win that only meant closer to staying in top four. Like it had no bearing on the title.
Yeah.
You know? So it was you're happy for that. And you're also, kind of like broken a bit because you're just like, man, like no bearing on the title. And then you watch that Inter match there and they're just finding ways, and that second goal controversy was wild because that's a PK.
Oh, 100%.
That's a PK for Sassuolo. It goes the other way and they score typically. And I'm just like, oh, that's the way it goes this season. So
yeah, it just feels like it. I think that, looking ahead to Genoa and the rest of this month, I think you have to go perfect because, we know how the back end of our schedule is. We still have to play Merida again. We have to play Milan again.
Yeah.
I think that you need to go perfect and put some distance between you and the rest of the top four.
Yeah, because in May, like on the 9th, Milan, 12th, Sassuolo, 16th, Merida, tough.
Yeah.
Tough little swing to 3 games, and that's all within a week.
Yeah, and if Juventus can get some results here, they could potentially leapfrog Milan for second. We're only a point off of them, which seems given how up and down the season has been. So
and honestly, just again, top 4 because so much rides on it in terms of this rebuild. Otherwise, you are way behind the 8 ball, and in the times that we're in right now, that could potentially be quite some time.
Yeah.
So they absolutely have to rally some wins. It's going to start with Genoa, hopefully, and this is it. Do we see the attitude? Do we see them come back and follow that up? This has been the one thing that's followed this team that's frustrating. And to me, again, coaching, players, whatever, they have to figure it out because how many times have we said, oh, this could be the turning point. This could be the turning point. This could be the turning point.
Every game this year.
Yeah. Like every time they come up with this big win, it's just like follow through. The only time we look like, okay, yeah, we're getting somewhere was January. And then outside of that, it's just been up and down, up and down, up and down, right? So it's a frustrating one. We talked about Pirlo. We talked about all these things. Ultimately, like what it comes down to for me, and I summed it up before this Napoli match, let the shit sort itself out, but just win. Like right now, all the players, every single one of them just needs to like dig deep and just get the job done.
Yeah.
They just got to fight. They got to find a way and just get those results. Nothing else matters. Mercados, all that, it doesn't even matter if you finish outside of top 4.
Yeah.
This team just needs to dig down and find the ways to win, man.
Yeah. I'm hoping for the Genoa match we see maybe a change or two. Maybe if Dybala can play, from the start, I'd like to see him from the start. Maybe Demiral for Chiellini, preserve that calf a little bit.
Yeah. And Vishwachi coming in here saying, man, I feel like we can stop calling them Inter. They've been better than us this season. Well deserved to win the Serie A. We got to respect that. Look, I'm friends with the guys from Inter worldwide, but my hate for that club has no bearing on how they play, what they do, where they are in the standings. We hate each other's clubs. It's just part of the rivalry.
Yeah.
I actually went on that show and I spoke very honestly about how I feel about their project, and they have become what we were, which was finding ways to win, even in those matches where you're performing ugly. But it does not change the fact of how I feel about that club. I will never forget what that club tried to do to us. Okay.
Yeah.
and tried to end us. So, yeah.
Also, have you seen their new kits? Their new kits and their new logo is arguably worse than some of ours. And that's saying something.
I think there's going to be some copyright infringement from Volkswagen. Like, other than the word tit, but it looks very Volkswagen-esque.
Yeah.
And I got to laugh that it's got the word tit in it. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But that new kit is shocking. Shocking stuff. But, man, speaking of kits, I just really, really need Juve to win that Coppa Italia. At least we get that badge on there.
Yeah.
Hey?
Give us something this year.
There you go. Give us something. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see the follow through. It'll be interesting to see how Paulo Dybala finishes. It'll be interesting to see how his club finishes. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Pirlo. One way or another. I've been saying it for a while now. Guys, girls, buckle up. It's going to be bumpy. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Only thing that matters at this point, top four. Okay. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks, Lewis. Carlo, who had joined earlier. Great guest. We'll get him back. Excuse me. Battling a cold. Oh, man. Nightmare stuff. Excuse me. All right. Thanks, everybody who joined. Great guests. Great chat, as always. We'll be back for pre-match versus Genoa and watch along time this weekend. So anybody that's listening to the audio on this, make sure, again, YouTube's a place to be. Make sure you subscribe on the YouTube channel and join us and watch the match live with the all Juvecast team. Let's have some fun. All right. And hopefully get to celebrate another victory. Thanks again, everybody. And thanks again, everybody, for the well wishes. This podcast was in question due to my wife and I expecting our second, and it's literally like I'm on call. Could happen at any moment now. So thanks everybody for the wishes in the chat and everything. Really, really appreciate all the love and all the support. As always, Forza Juve, fino alla fine. We'll talk to you guys this weekend. Ciao.